Something that I think has been coming up a little bit in some conversations I've been having is the continued remote environment. Even a lot of companies that have hybrid work environments or in person still have distributed workforces, and it's kind of become a new normal. So the question really is around engagement, especially in a time where there's this great resignation. People have more options than they usually did. It's kind of a candidates market, so you have to treat your employees the best that you can. They have, great options these days. What are you doing to make sure that you are engaging people in a distributed workforce?
Yeah, Jeff, phenomenal question. Always good to spend some time with you. The one word answer is culture. The Peter Drucker quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," comes to mind. But the more developed answer, there's kind of a 5-point approach that I try to take. And the first off is that personal element. I know you're big on the understanding the why, from our conversations. And I think that's the key element. Whether I'm working with somebody on my team that's halfway across the world or somebody that I can drive to the office and see, we've got to understand the why. And we've got to proactively and very intentionally work with that person in order to get them where they want. Now, this could be somebody that works for you. This could be a colleague. I'm a big believer in investing in relationships and trying to find wins for other people. So if it's somebody that, we need to be out there driving the deal with us, or if it's somebody that's, part of your team, a colleague, whatever it is, understand their why, their motivating factors, figure out how you can bring value to them in achieving what they want to achieve. Second element, communication, super critical. Obviously, it informs and feeds the first one, but communication is key. Making sure that there is some type of regular cadence of communication. If it's a valuable relationship in your world, there needs to be carved out time. So I'm a firm believer, especially for the people that I support on my team. I sent a survey at the beginning of the year and said, what does our coaching look like this year? Do you want to meet weekly? Do you want to meet bi-weekly? Do you want me to buzz off? Obviously, I'm not going to, but the point is try to arrive at a joint plan that is going to be, to beget mutual success. Meet them where they are, where they want to be met. But I'm a big believer in communication. My team would probably tell you sometimes maybe a little bit too much. I over communicate as opposed to under communicate. And I'm working on that. But the key element is communicating things to them that you believe will be of value, that will help them do their job better. Number 3, transparency. Be very transparent around key elements that are going to benefit them, where they can do their job better. I'll give you a case in point. One of the things that, especially as a leader, that is super advantageous for me to help my team with is some of the ways that they can get promoted, paid, optimize their payout, etc. So spending time with them to make sure that they understand the processes that maybe I didn't even understand fully when I was a seller, making sure they understand these processes from my lens on how they can truly optimize their success, their brand, and their trajectory from a career standpoint. Fourth, being in the field with them. When I got promoted, I gifted myself Mike Weinberg's book, Sales Management Simplified. He talks a lot about being in the field. Now, this was written in a pre-pandemic era, so that looked different, but you can still be in the field. You can be in virtual calls if that's all you can do. I've got my team scattered all throughout the country, so I can be available for their collaborative team calls. I can be available for customer calls. Be out there in the field with them. Even if you're just a fly on the wall, observe and see where you can make constructive coaching. You can have very valuable coaching discussions remotely or wherever they're conducted. Lastly, give space, trust the process, be clear with expectations. It's kind of like parenting. God knows I can't force my kid to do anything, but I can put the framework in place. I can be a role model. I can be a model. I can model the behavior. And I think the key element is then you have to give space. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I need to tell myself this and remind myself this, especially in parenting, but give space. Put the foundation in place, give them that autonomy and that ability to go out and do things their way, but work with them to develop the process and always be available. What are your thoughts?
Well, as usual, you're a tough act to follow. That's why I like to go first. But in all seriousness, I echo all of those. I think there's some overlap. I think in in what we both believe. You're definitely right that I think aligning on the why, like what really motivates every single individual, is really important. You can't treat your team as a monolith. It's a group of individuals that are all motivated and stimulated by different things. And to that, I guess in that lens, you think about different things that you can do to engage different people. There's a lot of different events that you can be doing with your team virtually. Used to do like a meditation thing with my team on Monday mornings, which is a great way to start the week. When the pandemic kicked off, I ran like a virtual workout class for like a year. There's a lot of different things you can do to engage your team through some of those virtual events. And, you talked a little bit about transparency, and I liken that to another idea that I'm fond of, which is vulnerability. I think when you try to be vulnerable with your team and try to talk to them about the things that you're weak at or stories where you failed, it kind of brings them closer to you and makes them admire you more and want to work harder for you. But I think you can actually combine the two. I've seen some companies that are having events where it's really just to come and have like event session, right? Like with your coworkers, or like we're going to do a virtual lunch together and just hang out like while we eat lunch and catch up on our personal lives. I think adding that vulnerability shows people that you care about them beyond just the scope of what they're doing in their professional life, and that you value them as people. A couple other things that I like to do, little things, maybe at the end of the week, I like to do something called wins and shout outs. It's a great way to end the week, end on a high note, say what your win is for the week, give someone a shout out, and then go into the weekend. Great way to have some momentum going into your weekend. And then last but not least, I'd say one bigger idea. You hear a lot about exit interviews, but you don't hear a lot about stay interviews. We only really want to hear people's feedback when it goes poorly or after it's too late, but we don't really do anything proactively to try to keep them there. What if we were doing an interview twice a year to say, how are you feeling about this role? What's missing for you? What's going well? What would make you leave, right? If you ask these questions proactively, you actually can figure out how you can keep people engaged. I've really been surprised. Sometimes when you poll people, the thing that they want is something that's very simple to give them. It could be they just want some like snacks in the office, or something that's pretty easy and cheap to deliver on, but they're just too scared to ask, right? So when you go to them and you ask these questions, it shows them that you care, which in and of itself will increase the engagement, but it also gives you insight into what you need to do in order to keep people excited. So those are maybe another handful of ideas that I like. And I'll be honest, the stay interview is not something I've incorporated yet, but it's something I'd like to start doing. So those are some of my thoughts.
I love it. As usual, Jeff, we complete each other. Vulnerability, recognition is so big, and then getting feedback and making changes as a result, building consensus as a team. These things all feed the culture, and that's ultimately why people will stay. How you retain and attract talent in this day and age, and how you stand apart as with a team culture. So phenomenal as always, my friend, and thank you. We'll see you next week.
Likewise. Thanks, Carson.